Everything Chelsea have touched today has turned to gold.
Chelsea have just conquered the world, but the real test begins now. Chelsea's Club World Cup triumph felt like a turning point, the end of chaos, the birth of a new era. But beneath the silverware and celebration lies something more fragile, a system still in progress, a squad still in transition. Enzo Maresca has laid the blueprint: possession, pressing, precision. But can it survive the unforgiving grind of a Premier League season? Injuries, depth, goals, pressure, Europe. The margins are thin. The expectations are massive. This isn't a story about what Chelsea have done. It's about what's coming and the cracks that could tear it all apart. These are the problems Chelsea will face next season. The first season is always easier, not because the job itself is simple, but because no one truly expects you to win. Maresca arrived with ideas that felt too academic, a style too rigid for the chaos of the Premier League, a vision too delicate for a squad still healing from the trauma of transition. But now, he's no longer the outsider with a clipboard. He's the manager of the world champions. He's the man entrusted with turning promise into power, potential into trophies, and glimpses of beauty into 38 weeks of domination. And that is where the problems begin. Because when the fairy tale becomes reality, the expectations shift overnight. No longer is Maresca building in peace. He is now building under pressure. From the fans who want titles, from the board who want value, and from players who now believe they are ready for more. Every substitution will be dissected. Every drop point will be judged. Every tactical tweak will be challenged. And for a philosophy as intricate as Maresca's, scrutiny can be a sharp blade. One misstep, and the same system that brought Chelsea to glory could become the very weight that drags them down. The press won't wait, the fans won't forgive. In the Premier League, it gives no room for doubt. The crown Maresca now wears is heavy, and next season he must carry it with no excuses. While their Premier League rivals were resting in beaches and recovery centers, Chelsea's stars were grinding through the humidity of American summer, chasing another trophy in the Club World Cup. The victory was sweet, but the cost may prove bitter. As other teams gave their key players extended breaks, Chelsea's core group logged crucial extra minutes in high-intensity matches. Cole Palmer, fresh off his breakout season, was pulling strings in Philadelphia. Enzo Fernandez was dictating tempo in Atlanta. Moises Caicedo was making tackles in Miami. This isn't just about a few extra games, it's about the cumulative load on players who were already pushed to their limits. Caicedo, the metronome of Maresca's system, was the only player to start every Premier League game in 2024-25. He led the club in minutes played, tackles, and interceptions. Now, instead of a proper preseason rest, he's been asked to maintain that relentless pace through July. Marc Cucurella tells the story of modern football's demands. After logging nearly 5,000 minutes for club and country, including Euro 2024 with Spain, the left back was supposed to be recuperating. Instead, he was bombing down the flanks in the Club World Cup final, delivering another top-class performance when his body was screaming for rest. The depth chart reveals the problem. For Caicedo, Enzo, and Palmer, the three pillars of Maresca's system, there are no ready-made replacements. New signings Andre Santos and Dario Esugo are talented but untested. They're projects, not solutions. When injury or fatigue strikes the first team, Maresca faces an impossible choice: overwork his stars or trust unproven youth in crucial moments. But nowhere is the depth crisis more acute than at left back. Cucurella has no natural backup. Renato Vega, who could cover the position, is expected to leave. Malo Gusto can fill in, but it's a square peg in a round hole. Acceptable for cup games, disastrous for Champions League nights. Chelsea have identified Ajax's Jorel Hato as the perfect solution, a 19-year-old who can play both left back and center back. But the deal remains uncertain, with Liverpool circling and a price tag that could reach 50 million euros. Until then, Cucurella carries the burden alone, with no safety net beneath him. The irony is cruel. Chelsea won the Club World Cup, but in doing so, they may have planted the seeds of next season's struggles. While Manchester City rested Haaland and Arsenal gave Saka a proper break, Chelsea's key players were still running, still pressing, still giving everything for the bad. Recovery isn't just physical, it's mental. The psychological reset that comes with a proper offseason is now compressed into a few scattered weeks. When the Premier League begins its relentless rhythm, will Chelsea's stars still have the hunger? Will their legs still have the spring? The Club World Cup trophy sits proudly in the cabinet, but the true cost of winning it may only become clear when the season's grind begins in earnest. In a league where margins are measured in millimeters, starting the race already tired might be the difference between glory and collapse. Enzo Maresca's system is not built on individuals. It's built on synchronization, on rehearsed automatisms, on players who understand space as much as they understand the ball. And therein lies the next great test: adaptation. Because last season, Chelsea's brilliance was born out of a squad hungry to prove something. Players who bought into the doctrine not out of comfort, but out of necessity. Now with silverware on the shelf and expectations in the air, the challenge is no longer just about teaching the system. It's about evolving it with a group that is no longer unknown, no longer underestimated, and no longer as interchangeable as Maresca might need them to be. But before evolution can happen, there must be revolution. Chelsea's squad needs surgery, not just additions, but subtractions. The deadwood must be cleared before the new growth can flourish. Christopher Nkunku, once heralded as the creative spark Chelsea needed, now finds himself surplus to requirements. Chelsea are willing to take a £17 million hit on the Frenchman, dropping his price from £52 million to £35 million just to move him on. Nicholas Jackson, despite his potential, has frustrated both Maresca and the board with his inconsistency and disciplinary issues. His red card against Flamengo in the Club World Cup being the final straw that softened the club's stance on keeping him. Raheem Sterling and Joao Felix have already been deemed surplus to requirements, both left out of the Club World Cup squad entirely. Sterling, who cost £47.5 million from Manchester City, will likely be sold at a significant loss, while Felix's permanent move from Atletico Madrid has proven to be another expensive mistake. Ben Chilwell, the former England international, has been shipped out on loan to Crystal Palace, a clear signal that his time at Stamford Bridge is over. These aren't just squad players being moved on. These are significant investments that haven't delivered, creating both financial and tactical headaches for Maresca's vision. The build-up phases, the 4-2-2-3, the 1-3-2-5, these are not just tactical drawings. They are a language, one that demands fluency from every player on the pitch, and that fluency takes time, repetition, and trust, especially for new arrivals who have spent their careers thinking vertically in chaos, not horizontally in control. And Chelsea's transfer policy, ambitious and youthful as it is, doesn't always bring plug-and-play professionals. It brings raw tools, explosive wingers, unrefined midfielders, defenders with upside but no rhythm in a positional possession system that collapses under just one wrong angle. Every fixture is a test of depth, every injury a domino, every rotation a risk. And Chelsea, despite their riches, are still painfully young, still unproven when the script changes, still prone to crumbling when the control slips. It is not about talent. The talent is undeniable. It is about consistency, adaptability, and whether this squad, this carefully constructed orchestra, can hit every note when the crowd demands a perfect symphony, even when the conductor is forced to switch instruments mid-performance. Because in Maresca's Chelsea, the margins are thin, and if even one piece falls out of sync, the whole mechanism stalls. And in the Premier League, a stalled machine gets punished without mercy. Every revolution births resistance. And now that Chelsea's system has been unmasked, dissected, and broadcast across Europe through their Club World Cup triumph, it won't be long before the Premier League's most analytical minds begin to set traps. Because while Enzo Maresca's positional play gives Chelsea control, structure, and rhythm, it also gives opponents a map with predictable coordinates, with zones repeatedly occupied and rotations rehearsed to the second. And in football, predictability is the beginning of vulnerability. The first line of resistance will come from managers who press in waves. The moment Chelsea shift into their 1-3-2-5 and high build-up, opposition forwards will no longer simply chase shadows. They will wait, bait, and pounce on triggers. The wide center backs, often the release points in Maresca's triangles, will become pressing targets, especially when Gusto or James and Cucurella are forced to step into the build-up under pressure. Opponents will begin to mirror Chelsea's build-up shape defensively, pressing with a front five to match Chelsea's, staggering their midfielders to deny passes into the attacking midfielders who seek those sacred pockets between the lines. And when they can't press high, they'll do the opposite. Condense the middle, force Chelsea wide, shut down the numerical superiority Maresca relies on in central areas, and turn the match into a game of crosses and recycled frustration. In transition, Chelsea's high defensive line, their great weapon in counter-pressing, becomes a double-edged sword. All it takes is one vertical ball behind the advanced center backs, one mistimed squeeze from a fullback caught high, and space explodes behind like a fault line under pressure. Teams like Newcastle and Liverpool, with runners in behind and midfielders who break lines, will bait Chelsea into overcommitting, only to strike in the vacated zones behind the ball. And the third man principles that give Chelsea their verticality, once anticipated, they become pressure points. If the opposition screens the holding midfielder and aggressively steps on the bounce pass, those sequences don't just stall, they become turnovers, right in Chelsea's half. The price of a misread pass in Maresca's structure isn't just possession lost, it's positional exposure. And that's where the Premier League's genius lies, in punishing exposure. Guardiola's City may respect the method, but they will dissect its weak angles. Slot's Liverpool will smother its rhythm with intensity, and even mid-table sides like Burnley or Bournemouth, who don't fear the ball, will sit in layered blocks and bet on Chelsea's patience running out. Because the truth is, every tactical blueprint, no matter how precise, meets its counter, and as Chelsea take the next step in their evolution, they will no longer have the advantage of surprise. Opponents will adjust. The question is not whether they will try, it's whether Chelsea will be ready when they do. Whether Maresca's system has enough wrinkles, enough flexibility, enough plan B, C, and D to stay one step ahead of a league that never forgives repetition. Because once they solve the puzzle, they come to destroy it. In football, tactics build the stage, but the mind performs the play. No system, no matter how refined, survives without the psychological steel to carry it through the storm. And in this chapter of Chelsea's journey, the storm isn't tactical, it's mental. Fatigue, expectations, the pressure of being expected to dominate, of being expected to win. It starts small. A loss at Emirates Stadium in winter, a draw at Brentford despite 75% possession. Headlines flip, too idealistic? Maresca's method exposed? The same pundits who lauded the system now question the mentality. But inside Cobham, Maresca sees something different. He sees growth. These games, they test more than tactical shape. They test resilience. Can Caicedo keep rotating into position when he's already made 60 high-intensity actions? Will Cucurella still trust the underlap after being caught once on the counter? Will the backline hold its nerve with 10 minutes left and the fans biting their nails? Maresca doesn't scream on the touchline for nothing. Every gesture, every correction, it's psychological reinforcement. Trust the angles, trust the width, trust the third man. He knows systems collapse when fear creeps in, when the striker stops making that decoy run, when the winger hesitates instead of pinning the fullback, when the midfielder chooses safe over progression. To counter this, Maresca builds belief into the repetition. Training drills simulate chaos. Players are told to execute the same combination under pressure, again and again, until instinct overrides fear. By March, Chelsea aren't just executing Maresca's patterns. They're living them. Cold nights, tight pitches, deficit on the scoreboard. Still, the back line pushes up. Still, the midfielders drop into lines, not panic. Still, they play through the thirds. But the mental game isn't only played on the pitch, it's played in the tunnel, where youth stares down experience. In the dressing room, where Maresca tells them, the moment we stop believing in what we built, it breaks. There are matches where Chelsea fall behind and don't crumble, where the crowd grows tense and they press harder, where mistakes happen and are followed not by shrugs but by organized retaliation. This is the phase of evolution where mentality forges identity, because tactics may give a team direction, but mentality gives it purpose. And Maresca isn't just trying to win a trophy, he's trying to build players who carry conviction, not just instructions. And so every test, every collapse, every comeback, every grind becomes a brick in the fortress of belief. This is not just Chelsea learning to play, it is Chelsea learning to suffer and still play. Last season, inconsistency was the ghost that stalked Stamford Bridge, not just in results, but in mentality. One week, they were fearless, outrunning Liverpool, outplaying Manchester City. The next, they collapsed under the weight of Luton Town or Nottingham Forest. The question now is not whether they can play good football. We've seen that. It's whether they can carry the burden of expectations and still execute it with clarity, because Maresca's model isn't built on improvisation. It is a machine, precise, interdependent, and unforgiving of hesitation. One player hiding breaks the chain. One mental lapse in rest defense unravels the structure. One missed cue and buildup invites pressure, and with it, panic. Chelsea's new midfield, Dario Esugo, Andre Santos, are young, gifted, but untested in a 38-game title race. The fullbacks are high risk, the backline brave but vulnerable to balls in behind. And if goals dry up, if Palmer struggles for rhythm, if Delap or João Pedro remain erratic, if Gittins takes time to adapt, who steps up? That's why mentality is the unspoken key to Maresca's success. Not just pressing drills or passing triangles, but resilience. The resilience to keep believing, to trust the plan when it's unpopular, to stay on script when the lights get blinding. Because football at this level is psychological warfare, and those who blink first lose. Chelsea have the ideas, they have the talent, they even have the trophy. But systems don't win seasons. Execution does. So the question is this: can Maresca's blueprint survive the chaos of a 38-game war? Or will the same cracks that nearly broke this team resurface again? Stay with us, because as the season unfolds, we'll be here dissecting every twist, every turn, and every test Chelsea must pass. This story isn't finished, it's only just beginning.